Good morning. Well, today we're going to, just like the past few years of doing this, I want to discuss really deep into four main subjects. The first subject we're going to talk about knocks. The second is about inserts. Then we're going to deal with the vanes. And finally the shafts. If you guys like to know anything more about my other line of products, because I think after you take the core of these four products, the rest is reasonably simple. The reason I want to focus on these four core products because that's what make up the arrow shaft. I mean, yes, we do in Firenock, we do make a lot of other pieces, but I think as a dealer, those are the four main pieces you absolutely needed. Okay, let's talk about nuts. If you look at your catalog, which actually I make the catalog to a point that you can use it, I want to give an overview of what our Firenock system is about, so that you can get a much better idea what this is about. Now, this is actually our entire system right here, which you can download on your website. If you're interested, we do have this piece on a 6x8 board you can buy. The idea is to show you how all 14 shape of Firenock, no, you don't have that in your catalog, but you can see it from here, okay? There's 14 shapes of Firenock. You may want to take down a lot of notes because everything of them is very technical. The 14 shapes of Firenocks are actually quite involved. Okay, I'm going to start right here to start with. There's 14 shapes of Firenocks, which is to fit anything from 0.16165. Beautiful. Yeah, the 14 shape of Firenock will fit from 0.165 all the way to 0.300. Okay, it stopped at 300 for a reason. Because anything beyond that, using a knock to work with it is going to be very difficult. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the three main shape and size of the Firenock. Okay. In the entire Firenock system is grouped into three major quote-unquote function size. Okay, the first one is called the zero, which that means you go into the G knock, which is like your injection, your back eco deep impact, your deer crossing SD. Those are average is 0.166 to 0.1665. Then we move to the next size. This size is what I call universal size. The reason I call it universal slim size is because it handles 0.202 all the way to 0.235. That's the chunk that most people deal with, like your access, your H.
235?
235. Okay, that's your Eastern H knock. Then anything above that is where you're going to find out standard sizes. The reason I put it in the three groups, you can imagine, from here on a catalog, you can see on this page right here, that's all your sizes, okay? I group them in a very different way so that you can understand. See, the very first top one is your G size knock. That's your 16601. And then you see the next two chunk. That is the chunk that go with your AE. And then you go instantly into your S and V. Your S, of course, is your center size. Then you can see this chunk down there is your crossbow size. Now, a lot of people, this becomes one of the latest and greatest because everybody want to learn about this chunk. But without understand these chunks don't happen. The good thing about for Firenock, the light knock system, this is one size, this too is one size, but this whole chunk is one size. Which means that if I make a circuit to fit this one, it'll fit all the above, all the below. Now, imagine if you are, say, you order a whole bunch of, you're a Bowtech dealer, you order a whole bunch of C-knocks, and now the Bowtech is not really selling that much, and then you just got a Scorpio dealership, every customer is getting the Scorpio. So what happened to your chunk of C-knock circuit, knocks and end caps and everything? You can actually just order the Q-knock, and everything you have is the same in this chunk. That's a very big deal. Because now, theoretically, you can just find one size you order the most and just get knocks of the other size, and you're covered. Which means that if you got a customer who wants Excalibur, you just need to order the F knot. You got a customer who wants the Barnett, you just get the M knock. You got customer who have a Raven R20, you get a C knock. R15, you get the U knock. As simple as that. Now, when we go into that, I will give you specs on what those each knock supposed to do and what each bolt supposed to do. The good thing is that we go one step further. This year, we actually build an app on our internet. It is based on, you can go to firenock.com and you go to Firenock and say knock style. It'll let you click the brand of the arrow, the crossbow you want to shoot, and what knock you'll fit. If it doesn't show it, that means it is out of the realm of what the combination is. The fact is that if you got a, say, Golden Kinetics Pro with the 2015, and you want to shoot a Tech 15, that's not going to happen because no knock exists to fit that bow.
That was the director you were talking to me about that you did even for the bows also back to 1990 or something like that.
No, that's the titanium system.
Oh, okay.
This is on the knock to arrow to crossbow and bow fit. Okay, which really be helpful. Now let's talk about the knocks, because this is what everybody seems to confuse on. Because if you believe it or not, there's actually 32 different arrow sizes in the current market right now. That's quite a bit. But you notice there's only 14 size knocks right here, so how can you fit all of them? Now let's start with we'll just use this page and start with it. Firenock, we started in 2006, and we instantly filed for a US patent on the called OFO fit system. Let me explain what the OFO fit is. In a traditional sense,
it worked last night.
yeah, that's bad. In the traditional fit knot, everybody design a knot like this. Okay? And you make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strips. This design allows you to fit plus and minus 1,000, which is great if you do it one size. But as a dealer, anybody want to make a wild guess how many size is in so-called a standard knot? The S knot supposed to be standard. It can be as small as 0.242 and as big as 0.246. Let me give you some a rundown so at least you know. The Black Eagle is 245. The Gold Tip is 246. Carbon Express is 242. Eastern is 242. Carbon Impact is 240. Carbon Impact is 242 and Carbon Force is 243. And we all know a knot should fit within 1,000. Now we already got 5,000 to start. Then we have to deal with ACC 349, ACC 360, 371, which is 240 and 250s. How do you cover that with a knot that's supposed to be 244? Answer is that it's close to impossible. So we have found out in 2006, this is what we designed. Same circle like everybody, but our fit knot is actually here. You notice there's nothing here, and there's nothing here. Just on these two sides. And they are not 60 degrees apart. They are 110 degrees apart. The whole idea is that if you compress this, we allow this surface to turn over. That is how we're able to teach a piece of polycarbonate to cover 242 to 246.5. This is extremely helpful because as you find out in some of the crossbow arrows and other arrows, when they tell you 300 exact, it is not the case. Okay. Understand this part, which is how a knot is supposed to go into and how it interact. Okay? Then this is what happened on our S knot, which is the knot that we first started. The S knot would fit every single standard size arrow knot we've had. Now, of course, for the last 3 years, the #1 selling shaft diameter, believe it or not, is the G size, which is the 1665. Well, people say, well, G is supposed to be 166. How come you're talking 1665? The funny thing is that you find out in the industry, it is not the case. Some people make it 165, one people 1655, and the original is 166. But the funniest thing is that when Eastern make the injection, it's actually a 1665. When you have an arrow that is only 166 thousandths, when you're off by half thousands, it's a very big deal. It won't work and you literally drop off. Now we have to go in and redesign our nut using this same system. So our nut is the only one that will handle 165 to 1665. That is 4 sizes overall. And believe it or not, this G nut that you're seeing is only 3.8 grain. And then after we enter the G nut, the similar theory go into about A and E nut. The A nut is actually what they call the access nut. The access nut, the reason it's called A nut because back in 2006, the only arrow of that size is access. So that's the reason we call it the A nut. But as you can imagine, the industry do not make one. It's actually from 2015 to 2004. So right on the get-go, you got 4 sizes. But the A nuts cover it. Now the E nut is a fun size nut. The E nut was made because the dealer wanted me to do ACC 349, which is actually the same size as the Eastern H nut. The H nut should never exist because I screwed one on the previous A, so I add ribs. So the A nut actually have ribs. The E nut have ribs that look like this. When you have ribs that tall, what can you do to it? The answer is everything. Because now all of a sudden in the industry you got some really weird size arrow. ACC 339. What size is it? If I remember correctly, it's 0.225. Then you got Nitro Stinger, 0.319. And then you got Alaska Stick, 210. How do you find a nut to fit those arrows? When you look at it, most of those arrows, the factory don't even make a nut that fits. So the nut will come in like this. See, this is an arrow shaft for most of those guys. And the nut will fit like this. Because not even then, they can find a nut that fits. That's how funny it is. Go ahead and check it out. I mean, it's pretty amazing how many people actually try to find a nut that fits. But we actually have all of them that will fit well. Now after the E nut, I want to go in and focus on one part that you guys may not recognize. It's our patented shear lock system. You see all the Firenock nut from this chunk right here? They all grab the string. Unlike others hug the string, flat the string, especially in crossbow. They usually just barely hug the string, a flat nut, sort of half moon, quarter moon, or a flat nut with the lips. Actually, this is one of the most important things for the new archery, especially high speed. You know why? Because sometimes the string have to catch up with the arrow have to slow down to catch up the bow. Because our cam system, especially in those high level bows, it slow down, it fast up, it slow down. So the arrow go out fast, and then all of a sudden the arrow is moving faster than the string. Then the string will catch up to the arrow. What happens when that happens? You got a disengagement between the string and the arrow, isn't it? What would that lead to? Luckily, nothing major. Unluckily, that can be a dry fire, isn't it? Because when they re-engage, if it's not exact, what was going to happen? It's not going to work. Now then, people say, well, just grab onto the string and you'll be it. But the funny thing is the industry as a whole do not have a standard of what the serving and the string and the nut supposed to be. Case in point, I got, in 2012 we checked, the serving string, AMO standard is 0.115, right? On the large size. But when you look at some of the companies' string, come with the factory at 0.134. That's 27% bigger than what it's supposed to be. What do you think is going to work? It's not. And that's one of the major problems. Now how do we circumvent that problem? Answer is that no matter what you do, this cannot be solved. The only way to solve it is that you give the spec to your customer, or if you're a string maker, you make sure the spec meets the nut you need. This is the spec we give to all our customers. 0.110 is ideal. Up to 0.125 is all our standard nuts. If you're a target guy, you want that perfect connection, you go 0.108. In a hunting situation, 0.112 is ideal. Now why is it, how come there's a 4,000 difference? That's because shooting style and approach. When you hunt, any slop, any movement is not recommended. That's where 112 will hug the string perfectly but without grabbing it, to the point that you won't twist. 110 gives you the vertical movement. 108 will give you vertical and horizontal movement like most target spot shooter and 3D guy prefer, especially spot shooter. So if you do 3D, 110 to 112, perfect. If you spot, 108. But how much can we accommodate without causing the string to break? Answer is 125. Then theoretically, you're pushing 10,000 on the throat. The system will work, but it'll be tight. But then you can imagine if a string is actually 137,000, well, that's not going to work too well, isn't it? And that's the reason that's very critical. This is also become true in crossbow. Because as crossbow speed jumps higher and higher, the full containment now becomes the only possible. Because a more aggressive cam, sharper string angle become the norm. You can see all the new crossbows are super narrow. When you're super narrow, what does that mean? The string angle become ridiculous. Well, string have some stiffness to it, right? When the string was rotating, the string is fast and soft. What happened to the arrow? Is the arrow going to catch up with the string every single moment? Answer is no. So the only chance, like, you have to grab the string. Otherwise, the string can jump over the knot. What do you got? We try fire. All right. Now, after you understand what this chunk of knot will do, we're going to the crossbow next. In Firenock, in the old days, there's three major forms of crossbow knocks that we make, which is the flat, the moon, and one containment, which is to do the 165 for 10-15. But as we know how much the industry moved forward, we start to make all the other sizes. And I'll give you the specs, okay? We start with 115,000. That will be the V-knock for vertical cross. That means anybody who shoot a vertical crossbow using a gold tip 22, the V-knock is what you use, is 115,000. Every knot I talk about right now, use 300,000 ID plus or minus 1,000. The next knot that go above that is a 125, which is also a design pattern, the stubby one. Let's go on, quote unquote, the bow tag. We've got bow tag of 125,000. And we discovered it worked quite well with the Raven, the R10 and the R20. Because their serving is actually closer to 130,000. So ours is actually 4,000 or 5,000 tighter, very much like the orange knock. Then the next size, which is 135,000, that will fit the old Raven, which have 134,000, which is your R9 and your R15. Now all this is without the bushing, it's straight connection to the knock. So if any customer say, will the Firenock fit the Raven arrow? Answer is no, it will not. If you want to shoot a Raven arrow, you shoot with the Raven knock. If you want to use that system with our system, the first thing to do is that you shoot an arrow without a bushing. That is a disclaimer in every one of the Firenock. You must not use any bushing in our system, unless it's over 315,000. Because those are target. Target bow never have power. When you have power, you cannot afford the bushing. Okay, 130,000, you go to 145,000. The 145,000 currently, there's two companies use it. That's Parker and Scorpion. They are long prong because their trigger box allowed it to make it better. The 155,000 is what we call it, technically the universal knock, because most companies use that, which is all your 10-point, your 10-point, your wicker ridge, your native, your Horton, and your Matthew, which is your mission. But that's an exception to the rule. If you look at missions, you can use the J knock on every single one of them, except the 400 or anything above 400. You know why? Because the mission trigger is not a perpendicular trigger. That means that the string is hitting the knock at an angle. Now imagine you're hammering a nail at an angle, and you can handle it to a certain extent. The moment you exceed a certain force, that nail is going to bang. And that number is 400. We can handle the mission 380, 360, no problem. The moment you hit 400, there's no knot you should ever use except the original metal knot with a lip for mission. Because that metal will allow you to hit the string at an angle without crushing. Now after the mission, after the 155, then we go to 165. 165 is a very exciting piece. I would say for two reasons. Because 165 original was designed for PSC Tech 15 only. And anybody who know PSC, that arrow is actually not a 300 size arrow, it's a 298,000. Which means that 300,000 is 1,000 too small. So in order to circumvent the issue, we'll let the D knot run its course because PSC is no longer making the Tech 15 arrow anymore. And we push all the PSC customers to the 300 size arrow. That's the reason we actually make the D2 knot. The D2 knot is same as the D knot, but it's meant to fit the 300 size. Well then they'll say, what happened to all my customers who shoot weird size arrows? But what do you mean by weird size arrow? The arrow that's non-300. What are those? Carbon Express. All the Carbon Express arrow are 285,000. What happened to the new PSC Fang? There's so much of it. They happen to be 285,000. Well, you say, well, there's plenty of other knives that work with it. They won't. The reason for that, because all those arrows are extremely high in fiberglass. They don't contact. So you cut off a big chunk of it. Second, that knot, if you impact on fiberglass on any of the knot button pushing it, especially with metal, those arrows will crack. So in order to overcome that, you can see there's a unique knot all the way to the bottom of the list. It's called a Firenock Y. This is a knot will fit every single 285, but with some extra abilities. So what happens if you happen to run into gold tip or vapor crossfire, which is also called the gold tip laser 2 kinetics, which is also called the new nitro, which is a 270,000 arrow. That arrow is the heaviest wall in the entire industry. So what can you possibly put in to make it work? I designed the Y knot. If you shave all the ridges, the cylinder of the Y knot is 0.269. So if you shave all the ridges off, you have left over, then will fit the 0.270 perfectly. That's how we manage. Now what happened to all the old guys who like to shoot their aluminum, or you got some leftover Easterns, which some company like Binance is still using. You're dealing with 0.298, 0.304, and 0.306. 0.298 is technically the exclusive side for all the Eastern arrow. That is reason when the mandrel was made for the Tech 15 is also 0.298. That's the reason this two knock, the M and the F knock, happened. I got good news for you. Notice that, like you take the course 2 years ago, you notice that we have a C knock, it's gone. The old C knot that looks like the M knot is no longer there. What we want to do is that we want to make this chunk of knot, which is all the crossbow knot except the Y, use the same tool. So we redo the C knot and call it the M. So that the internal tools, the end caps, the battery, and this all are on the same depth. So that when your customer come to you who say you have a 2 dozen of really good crossbow arrow. Original is made for, say, the Excalibur. You have the flat knot on it. Now he say, he wanted a bit short, narrow arrow. He moved to Raven. What happened to all his arrow? This means junk? No. With us, it's easy. You pop the F knot out, and you put the C knot or U knot based on which model. If he's got an R20, you put the C knot on it, it will shoot immediately. All the work you're putting into the customer become valid. Well, people say, well, then I'm not making money. But I say, trust me, in this industry, if you service your customer right, you may not make money from this guy, but his friends will be your next customer. It's more than worth it. You build relationship with your customer. That's the reason we do this course, to give you the knowledge so you can build a really good relationship with your customer. They appreciate knowledge, sincereness, and trustworthy. You want to be the trustworthy guy. If you have any problem, you want to be the guy they call. That's the reason I designed a system so you not just save them money, you save you hassle and make them feel like whatever they buy have value, a long-term value. Because it could be good, be consistent, it's upgradable, it's side-gradable, and reusable. Nobody in the industry do that. But then, unlike others, I believe all my dealer, my customers want value, and they would not mind to pay a lot more the first time, but the value is there. All right, how about the M and the F knob? What's so special about them? You notice the M and F knob have two slots in it with two black pieces on it? Those are the O-rings. Right on the get-go, you come with two sizes. That means every pack of F knob and the M knob come with O-rings. The O-ring A and O-ring B, okay, which is a thin one and a thick one. You put thin ones, you'll make it fit 298,000. You put two thick ones, you'll fit 303,000. You put one thick, one thin, you'll fit 300,000. Now when all hell breaks loose, they call you and say, you know I shoot the Eastern 2216, which is 306 to 307,000. What do? Well, you call me now, because then I'll give you that special O-ring, so that you'll fit the 2216. If you think through it, how much stuff is left? Nothing, isn't it? That pretty much concluded our first section about knocks. I'll leave 10 minutes for discussion. Questions?
As far as the knocks and the way the surface on that we're trying to size to the string itself.
Plus or minus 5,000 on a crossbow.
Yeah. Those things, and you look at them, and of course, I'm not talking about your stuff, but they have a certain way that they fit or snap on there, and you're going to have certain levels of, I guess, tension in there. Is there any difference between the surface of what that contacts with the string as far as being smooth or having any texture?
I'm so glad you bring it up. Since you guys are not professional string makers, but I do try to solve that problem with all the professional string makers. The number one problem with all this issue is that do you believe that most of the string in the market are not round, they're oval, unless you got professional string makers with professional string machines. I've discovered this problem, I finalized and confirmed this problem in 2014. And I go ahead and design a string serving jig for the entire industry. I don't sell a lot, because the price of it is exactly 100 times more than the other. I mean, most string serving jig you get it for $3, $5, $10. Mine start at $250, $250. But you give you perfect tension when you serve on a string serving machine. The moment when you can apply not 1 or 2 pounds, but up to 26 pounds of pressure on the string, you force the string to be round. That's where the knock fit and the string becomes so critical. If you look at a lot of the mediocre string company, the moment you start shooting it, you notice your string actually turn into a D shape. In other words, the string actually look like this instead of this. You know why? They keep on in that part, this part actually fall. These 2 points become your nightmare. You know why? Because everybody like to grab the bow with the string, and they left dirt on the string. When you shoot it, these 2 corners of that string will score the inside of the knock. Guess what? When the temperature drops to about 4 below, all the polycarbonate is going to behave like crystal. Next thing you know, they cracked, they dry fire. But while we're talking about that, that is the reason when you buy a set of Firenock from us, we always give you double the knock. You know why? Because the moment you shoot through an animal, the chance you score the knot is high. And if you put pressure on a knot that's scored, it's like put pressure on crystal. What do you think is going to happen to it? It's going to break. So the cheapest insurance you can do to your vertical bow or any knot that's exposed, like your V-knock and all your capture knock for full containment knock, you always should change your knock after you shoot through an animal. It is not worth holding to it. This cheap thing is only $1. You just shoot through an animal. Paying $1 to get a new knock so that it will not dry fire you, that your season will be over, is more than worth it.
What did you say the poundage was on that serving to make it where it'll start to be round and not oval?
Actually, as little as 10 pound would do it. But in most cases, if you look at other jigs out in the market, they cannot hold a pressure more than 1.5 to 3 pounds. That's the max. If anybody told you, oh, I can hold my serving jig up to 10 pounds, then the next question, for how many inches? Because the moment you pass a few points, the initial friction kicks in, your pressure will go low so fast. Then all of a sudden you go for the oval situation. And that's the reason for the crossbow crowd, I always said, before you put a string on it, even if you know the factory, say some of the L9 and L15, they told you 134,000. For the guy who just shoot over the season, I go and clip a few just on the person who bring the bow in, they're lucky to be 130,000 because the string is turning so oval like this. I mean, yes, at this moment it's great, but whatever when it's this, you're no longer at 34,000, you're close to 128. So the serving shape and the wear is a very big deal. It's the biggest deal in all crossbows. It's the same deal with vertical bow, but the reason most people don't recognize it because vertical bow, when it failed, it's not catastrophic, but in crossbow it is. Now imagine your string and your knot sort of semi-separated, and the string finally catch up with the knot but did not engage perfectly. What do we got? That's a perfect dry fire. Because at that moment, the string is no longer under any load. And that's the end of it. Did I answer your question correctly? Or the way you want it?
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if there was also, because I always, when I think about how close the tolerance are on that string and stuff, then you get concerned, or at least all the time situation, there's too much drag on it, or it's too much
Oh, yes,
or
definitely.
there's not enough.
Well, actually, that is the reason. If you look at our Firenock patents, our first ever patent on archery is on the knot throat. The Firenock knot and string is actually a shear design. That means the moment the knot leaves the string, there's only one contact. You find out there's a lot of different designs in the knot. Some of them are called multi-click, some of them have slope on it. But when you have that, it actually causes problem because your contact between the knot and string become multiple points. And if you look at it, there's only 2 companies on this planet using single cavity, single mold. You understand what that means?
Oh, I know what you're saying, yes.
That means every single one of our knot is actually come from the same cavity and the same mold on the entire. For us, the only other company would do that is Biter. But we all go one step better. All ours are virgin flowed. That means that when we go through to make the knot, the material do not get thrown back to make more. We flow it as original, always. So every one of our knot is 100% identical. That's critical, you know. Because see, when you go into very precision shooting, when you're looking at 130, pushing 150 yard, precision shooting, any variance become a big deal. And this is what the big deal is. If you do not maintain a consistent, you have nothing on your knot. So remember, that's the only piece besides the arrow edge touches your bow. Any question on mini end, on the knots, before we move to the next session? All right, let's do a 10-minute break. We'll go into session 2. Can you shut it off for me? Let's press the button.
I don't know if I hit the right button. I hit that one.